Somebody that she couldn't see was now walking down the staircase. She knew that whatever it was, she could feel that it was now watching her.
And then I told your mom, and I said, you know what? I believe you that there's something in your house that's like gonna ghost. I'm not comfortable to stay there in that house.
I lifted up my shirt, and when I looked down, there were numbers scratched on my stomach. Hello darlings, it's me, Christine D'Amour. So today I'm going to be sharing part 2 of my haunted house series, which revolves around my parents' old house in Woodland, California, which led to them having no choice but to move out. And if you missed the first video, I shared some terrifying experiences that my family and I had living there. Actual photos of my home, and you even heard my mom tell you herself the unimaginable encounter that my mom and dad both had with an entity. And if you watch that video, you understand the many reasons why we had no other choice but to contact a paranormal research group to investigate. But you didn't hear the whole story. So today I'm going to be sharing more details about our haunted home. In the last video, I showed you guys the actual emails that were exchanged between the paranormal research group and I. So if you missed that first video, I definitely recommend watching that before you watch this video. So click the link down below. I'll have the video linked down in the top of the description bar. Open a new window and come back to this video after watching the first one. Also, in this video, I actually called my aunt, who did live with my parents for a short period of time, who experienced something so incredibly terrifying that caused her to never want to be left alone in our house. And in this video, you will be hearing the actual call with my aunt. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started on the story. So my Auntie Carol had just sold her house, and she needed a place to live in the meantime before purchasing her new home. My mom and my dad offered for her and her kids to go and live with them until she bought her new house. Every morning, my aunt had a routine where she would drop the kids off at school, and then she would come back to the house where she would be left completely alone for the next 8 hours. So one day while my Auntie Carol was home alone, she decided to go into the kitchen and start putting some dishes away. About 5 minutes into her doing this, she paused what she was doing because she started to hear some shuffling and things being moved around upstairs in my parents' bedroom, which was the room that was just above where she was. So my aunt decided to walk outside to the front and into the garage just to see if any of my parents' cars, only confirming that my aunt was definitely alone in the house. So my aunt went back into the kitchen and decided that she would just continue doing what she was doing because my aunt is a tough lady, even though my aunt is mentally too strong to let anything like a little noise in the house scare her. She started to feel the energy levels in the house shifting into a very dark and unnerving feeling. Now, I am very familiar with this feeling. You have the same feeling as if you're walking around through a house in complete darkness with all of the lights turned off. And when those energy levels start to shift like that, you just feel so surrounded and vulnerable and just terrified of your surroundings. Literally one of the worst feelings to feel. But even though the energy was starting to change, my aunt just decided to carry on with what she was doing in the kitchen, but almost timed perfectly as she started to put the dishes away again. She started to hear the floorboards in my parents' room starting to creak, but they were starting to creak in a walking pattern, back and forth, back and forth, and back and in from my parents' room and out through the hallway upstairs. So my aunt, being the brave lady that she is, decided to walk out of the kitchen and to the bottom of the staircase so that she could see where the walking was leading to. As my aunt stood at the bottom of the staircase, she could actually see directly up into the upstairs hallway and to my parents' door. And even though she heard those footsteps walking from inside of my parents' room out through the hallway, the door was completely shut. It got quiet, so my aunt decided to go ahead and take a seat on the couch in the living room right by the front door, which was still in the same room as the staircase. And as my aunt was just sitting on the couch trying to wrap her mind around what the heck she was hearing, somebody that she couldn't see was now walking down the staircase. The sound of the fibers in the carpet being pressed on with weight and the movement of the dragging of the foot against the carpet as each step was made, it was now making its way down the staircase. And that is not a sound that can be mistaken for anything else. And now as the footsteps are getting closer and closer to the bottom of the staircase, my aunt is frozen. And as she hears the footstep hit the very last step, it veers left towards the front door. And you can actually hear the noticeable change in the tone of the footsteps from the carpeted staircase to the marble floor in the doorway. Just a couple of more steps later, the footsteps come to a stop. And my aunt could not even move at this point. And she could feel that even though she couldn't see who or what this was, she knew that whatever it was, she could feel that it was now watching her. So my aunt picks up her purse, picks up her keys, leaves the house, and doesn't come back until everybody else comes home. And ever since that day, she always found something to do outside of the house so that she wouldn't have to be left alone there, and would only come back home when everybody else came home. Before filming the story time, I decided to call my aunt because I wanted to give you an accurate description of all of the events that happened. And as we were in the middle of our conversation, I had quickly decided to grab my camera and start recording our conversation because I just felt like these experiences that she was telling me was something that you should actually hear straight from her.
I can hear that the same person like moving around in the kitchen downstairs. And then it seemed like he was coming down by the front door too. So I kind of like get out in the room and then I look around and I don't see anything. You know how many days I've been hearing this? I really feel it that there's something, you know, there. Somebody there. And then I told your mom and I said, you know what? I believe you that there's something in your house that's like kind of ghost. Wherever I live, I never experienced things like that. And that house, it was a daytime. I'm not comfortable to stay there in that house. So what I do, I leave the house. I just, you know, go store and then just, you know, hanging out wherever I go. But I never go to the house. I kind of like scared. I just think like, okay, I'm not going to stay around here. And I've been hearing that when I was there. When I move out, of course, I moved to my apartment. So I don't hear anything. But your mom said that, you know, they always have that things like that. They always hear that.
So because many more terrifying experiences started to happen while my aunt was there, she decided that instead of just staying with my mom and my dad before she purchased her house, she had decided to just move out and find an apartment for the meantime because she was just too afraid for herself and her kids. So she just decided not to live at my parents' house any longer. As you guys know, if you watched the part 1 of my series, you know that my fiance Chris, my daughter Lexini, and I used to go over to my parents' house all the time just to go over for dinner or just to hang out. So one day my mom had been making lobsters and she asked for the 3 of us to come over to have some lunch. So after everybody finished up their lunch, Lexini and my sisters ended up going back upstairs to go play. So as my mom and my dad Chris and I were sitting around in the living room, my dad turns to my mom and asks her, "Did you tell them about what happened to your stomach?" And so I look at my mom waiting for an answer, and she's kind of sitting there quiet for a couple of moments, and she turns to me and says, she said, "I woke up last week and I noticed that the skin on my stomach was burning. I lifted up my shirt, and when I looked down, there were numbers scratched on my stomach." Now, my mom said that these were not scratches to where they broke and cut open the skin to where it was bleeding, but they were red and they were just welted up. And this is something that my dad saw also. And he kind of made a joke trying to make light of the situation, saying that, "Oh, you should play the lottery with those numbers or something." I could just tell that my dad was just trying to make light of it so that we don't attract negative thoughts to the situation or show any fear. This is something that she told me years ago, obviously, but it kind of makes me want to call her right now. Hopefully she picks up. I feel bad bringing this up after all this time, but...
Hello?
Hey.
Hey.
You remember when you woke up with scratches on your stomach, and then there were, like, numbers?
Why?
Well, you said that there was numbers on your stomach, though?
Yeah, and letters. What are you up to?
Nothing.
Alright.
Okay, bye.
Love you, bye.
Love you, bye. Obviously, there was a lot going on in that house. But you know what's funny is that that same day that she told us about the numbers and apparently letters that were scratched on her stomach, after that conversation, I ended up going back upstairs to check on my daughter and see what my sisters were up to. So I went upstairs, and as you guys know from my last video, I told you that my 2 sisters were now sharing one room together because they were too afraid to sleep alone. So when I went upstairs, I ended up going into my sister's room, and what I saw just made me feel so bad for what was happening there. And it kind of just puts you in a place where you just feel so helpless. And what I saw in my sister's room made me realize that whatever was happening in their home was even worse than what I thought it was. I wasn't living there at this point, and for the things that I experienced, just being there only a few times, I just knew that living there 24 hours a day, I can tell it was getting bad. Basically, what I saw on the wall of my sister's room was my mom had written a Catholic prayer on the actual wall, not on a paper on the wall. And I took pictures of this years ago. As you can see from these photos, my mom wrote this Catholic prayer on the wall of my sister's room, and I don't even want to know what happened to make her feel at that moment that she had no other choice but to write a prayer on their wall. But the wall that she wrote it on is on the same wall that the closet door sliding open right in front of my sister. So one more mini story before I end this video is a personal experience of mine that scared the shit out of me. Something that a lot of people would want to experience, but when it's in front of you happening, you're gonna wish that it wasn't real. Basically, upstairs, my parents had a theater room, which they turned into a game room because it held pretty much the majority of my sister's toys. As you guys know, my sisters were around 8 and 9 at this point. In this particular room that we called the game room, they played in there constantly. So one day I was up there with my sisters. Once we finished our game, my sisters ended up running out to go find something else to do, but I just stayed behind and I sat down on the floor with my back against the wall, just texting on my phone. As I was sitting there for a good 10 minutes in complete silence, I hear from the left side of the room those same footsteps with the feet being pressed into the fibers of the carpet, walking each step, one right after the other, in front of me. And as it moves to my right, there's a floor piano that's laid across the floor that my sisters had. And you can hear the steps moving towards that direction. And as it hits where the piano is now being stepped on. Actual weight was hitting this piano straight on, and it walked across. These are the same exact footsteps that my aunt heard, and it kind of seems like the footsteps, we've only ever really heard it coming from upstairs, whether it was in my parents' bedroom or in that game room. But this is pretty much where I'm going to leave the story off right now. There's so many other stories. If you guys want to see more, I know that I do have one huge major story that Chris had where he actually came face to face with whatever was there in our house. If you guys want me to do a part 3 of my haunted house series, go ahead and comment that down below and like the video so that I know that you guys definitely want to see more of these types of videos. As promised in the first video, I will reveal to you guys what I found out about the land and the proof that I found online that we are not the only residents that are experiencing hauntings in this property. I will reveal all of that to you in a third video if you guys are interested, so go ahead and make sure that you comment that down below. And that pretty much wraps it up, my darlings. If you guys haven't already, go ahead and please subscribe by hitting the red button down below. And don't forget to hit the notification button bell as well. That way you're notified immediately as soon as I upload any of these Storytime videos or any of the other videos on my channel. Also, don't forget to follow me on social media. All of my links listed down below as well. As always, I love you darlings very much, and I'll talk to you later. Bye! Mwah!